Barcelona principles. It was something that was set up by AMEC, kind of the rules and regulations for measurement. And ABEs are a big no-no. If you are being forced to do those by clients, it's understandable some of them need it, but you always want to make sure that they understand it's not a great benchmark and that you can maybe provide them with some better numbers. So all of these are great numbers to maybe help get you to a point, but they shouldn't be the sole part of your measurement. They really are vanity metrics. So vanity metrics, I've also heard them called ghost metrics, that they feel important but are ultimately superficial. What this really means is you might hand that number to someone, whether it's share of voice, whether it's impressions, and they kind of look at you and say, well, so what? What does this mean to my business? If you can't answer that for them, then sometimes they don't want to hear, they don't want to keep going, and measurement suddenly becomes an extra item instead of a necessary item. So just a few interesting things to keep in mind. Digital marketing spend is expected to grow by 10% this year. The business value of these marketing efforts is pivotal for all online marketers. Digital is becoming necessary. That doesn't mean social. You know, digital is that entire ecosystem of how someone can find you online, of how someone might engage with you online. So if you're only looking at media, you're leaving out this huge growth area that could be coming in the next year. Only 7% of word-of-mouth conversations are online. So keep that in mind. If you're only looking at social or traditional media, you might be missing some very important feedback and conversation. Google recently released a study called Micromoments. I definitely recommend looking at it after this webinar. Mobile has changed how we live. There are studies out there. Millennials are on an average of 2 to 3 screens. Gen Zers are using 5 screens. So they really are looking at these micro moments. You journey into hundreds of real-time, intent-driven micro moments. And each one gives you an actual opportunity for your brand to show up, to become part of that decision process. Again, if you're only looking at some of the media measurement, you might be missing out on some of these micro moments. We really want to be thinking, where are the website metrics? What about sales numbers? What about database analytics, email metrics, paid social metrics, stock prices, etc.? These are really all things that, if they matter to your business, could these help you prove your point and prove your worth? So instead of having PR or even PR measurement be kind of on the sideline, you can be right there in the middle. So how do you know you're measuring the right things? Let's be honest, with big data, with everything out there, there's everything that's measurable at this point. But if you try to measure everything, you're going to lose the true insights. So how do you know you're measuring the right things? You really need to ask the right questions. So this is that setup we were talking about. You never want to jump right into measurement. You want to make sure that whatever you are measuring, analyzing in real time, that you're providing value. Otherwise, you're spending a lot of time creating decks or statistics that might not map back to what your company needs, and suddenly, instead of becoming necessary, you kind of become useless. So, questions you should be asking before you're measuring. What is the strategic goal of this program, specifically the business goal? I know I have a lot of clients who they first come, they go, I need more mentions. I kind of ask them, why? What is the point of getting more mentions? What does that drill down to? What are you hoping to achieve by getting your name out there more? They usually then slowly work their way back and understand that it needs to tie back to, really, why are you spending money on PR? What is that money supposed to lead to? Who are your key audiences? You can't boil the ocean. You know, not everybody is going to see your message. So who are those people you need to be reaching out to? Sometimes that's an internal voice, the employees. It could be that you need investors to know what's going on. It could be a very targeted part of the consumer. But making sure you map that out from the beginning will really help to show, one, you're measuring the correct audience and the impact. But two, your metrics can help the team strategize how they should get that message out to that audience. What platforms will be affected? So this is where that integration really comes in. People immediately jump to, yeah, we're going to do traditional media. Yes, definitely social media. Not realizing every time you usually tweet out something, you usually have a link to your website or a link to that white paper. or a link to a thought leadership infographic. That then brings in the website. That then brings in maybe some analytics for each of those pieces. If you have a very specific day that you're going out and you know that leads not only to a website but maybe to an e-commerce platform where they can make a purchase, that could bring in that sales data. If you are sending out an email at the same time that you are sending out some of this, are you capturing that email data to see if that's also leading people to that website since you helped with the messaging on that email? There's a lot of more platforms that can be affected. Does this mean you have to measure all of them? Not necessarily. There might be another department who is measuring it, but maybe you can work with them to share that data to bring it into a more holistic story so your data tells a story. So what are the internal KPIs that are being used? This is really the focus that we will get into next with Todd. KPIs, or key performance indicators, are really those business metrics that when you put in front of management, they get it. It means what metric can I give them that ties back to that actual business goal? And we'll run through a few examples and visuals for those as we go forward. What is the internal reporting structure? I have a few clients that for them we make a very large deck with tons of information in it because they need to know everything. But they then pass that information up to someone else who passes that information up to someone else. And those people are not going to look through a 50-page deck. So how do you make sure that you're creating something that will resonate whoever this gets sent to? Is it executive summaries? Is it more visuals for some people, more tactical for another? You just need to know where this stuff is going so you can make sure that you are articulating the message correctly for each audience. And really kind of a cheat is, what insights are we hoping for? I sometimes ask clients, as you know, we go through a long process, we ask all the questions, we fill out our brief form, and then I go, well, what are you really hoping for a year from now, 6 months from now? If you were able to go to your boss and say, we killed it, what is that insight that you need? What's interesting about this question is it sometimes causes them to think differently and work backwards, and it sometimes allows you to bring in different forms of data. But essentially, these questions will help you set yourself up that you can now succeed with your measurement. You can figure out exactly what data you need to filter through your program that it becomes a truly integrated process. So as we mentioned, we're now going to go through some KPI types where you'll see some of the integrated measurement come together on the screen. We're going to go through 5, but I think it's very important to note, and there's some real-time examples afterwards, that these aren't the only KPIs. These are just examples. So by listening to your management, to your client, you'll really understand, is there a different KPI I need to look at? Is there a different way to prove my worth? So while we're showing you 5 potential ones that are incredibly important, don't limit yourself to these. And with that, I'll hand it over to Todd.
Thank you, Nicole. And this is Todd Grossman at Talkwalker. And it's really a great time to be in marketing and communications and have the availability through technology to measure and prove the value of digital marketing. And Marcom can now tie spend to revenue, and in fact, it's becoming a mandate, which was published in the Gartner survey that Nicole was referring to, with spending on digital marketing in particular expected to grow by 10% this year, proving the business value of marketing efforts is now going to be pivotal for all online marketers. This doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but linking marketing efforts to business impact can be also time-consuming, and we at Talkwalker like to use business impact metrics in helping brands save time and prove marketing success by overlaying business KPIs, which we'll get into, onto social data metrics for easy and immediate analysis. So whether you want to see the connection between social marketing and in-store sales, or online registration and hashtag campaigns, business impact metrics can help you demonstrate the success of marketing campaigns by creating direct links with established performance indicators, such as the KPIs that we're going to be talking about. Even beyond marketing, you can allow for any timestamp data set to be added to a graph, from political polls to weather data, making potential use cases limitless. So the 5 powerful KPIs listed here, you can start measuring the business impact of online marketing from building awareness all the way through to market share. And they are awareness, acquisition conversion, number 3, retention, number 4, sales, and finally, market share. So
and
let's go.
Too, Todd, because Todd made a very good point that you can put political data, you can put in weather data. What if you're hosting an event and they do have to check in? Maybe you can get that check-in data to show over time when people are coming to your event. So it's really thinking strategically of, can I bring in any data from what I'm doing, from what our strategy is, that you can then put over time and show that impact. And with that, I'll let Todd take back over with awareness.
So with regards to awareness, start by asking, is your spending leading to coverage? The first step of any campaign is building awareness. Without it, your brand, product, or service remains hidden in the shadows. But what does success look like when comparing coverage to spending? Imagine you spent thousands of dollars on a PR marketing campaign, you on the line have done, to build awareness of your brand, but has it actually paid off? So the below graph is an example of a PR spend versus brand awareness indicator that helps you prove the true impact of any brand awareness campaign. So here we see when PR spending was up, there was a direct correlation increased with Coca-Cola mentions going up. So it's all about overlaying the data, and we'll see this in the next KPI as well.
And I think one thing to point out here is the graph itself is pretty powerful, but you do see that there are some spends in areas that might not lead to awareness. So adding on top of this that so what information really brings that insight. So we see that blue spike there after the biggest spend. What worked? What were the messages that came through? Really analyze, was it because we put more effort into one platform or another? Did we use an influencer? Did we time it with an event that was going out? These are all questions that the graph itself is very powerful, but how are you supplementing your insights around it and maybe slicing and dicing the data even better to make sure you're getting that aha moment that whoever you're delivering this to will know, I should spend that much next time in support of your efforts because look what it got me, and we'll make sure to target X, Y, and Z. Now we'll go on to acquisition.
So for acquisition, you can start by asking, are your social efforts driving conversion? For many B2B and B2C companies, lead generation takes place on websites. Whether it's a registration form or a demo request, these are the nuts and bolts behind a successful online marketing strategy. But is there a clear link between your social marketing and PR efforts and actual lead generation? So below, we show here how you can plot lead generation data from either like Salesforce data or Google Analytics against online mentions. Comparing social KPIs, such as this, with lead generation statistics can help you determine the efficiency of social campaigns. Being able to quickly see which marketing activities actually generate the leads and opportunities is invaluable when developing a robust yet flexible marketing strategy. And Nicole, do you have anything to add on that?
Yes, I would also say, when we ask those questions at the beginning, who are the audiences that are going to be receiving this? This is very powerful for your internal sales teams. It's sometimes very difficult to understand what they actually need, and people work in silos. By sharing this information with them and providing extra information around some of these spikes of what really worked, they can also share back with you, you know what, I was able to achieve X sales because I used your infographic. I'd really like more of those. So that then ties back even to the sales and spend data that we looked previously for that, how much they spend on a PR campaign. If you can prove that your sales team really was supported by that and it led to leads, you open up the conversation, you share information across silos, and all of a sudden people are expecting that report, and it really helps to make it useful and provide insights. And now on to retention.
So the third KPI, retention, is how you can start asking yourself, is your online reputation pushing customers away? It's no secret that acquiring a new customer is several times more expensive than retaining a customer, but like prospects, existing customers can of course be affected by a brand's perception online. Whether your online reputation is positive or negative, understanding the impact of reputation on retention helps ensure that you don't lose your best customers. The chart below compares social sentiment to retention rate to understand the impact of brand reputation on one's business. So tracking the impact of negative PR activity on a customer retention rates can not only give sales and account managers an early warning of events that could impact revenue, it also provides marketing and PR professionals with another measure to prove the value of reputation management efforts.
And I think we've all probably had to deal with crisis situations. You know, they come out of nowhere, and you basically do your best to stay ahead with messaging and make sure you're giving the right information. Tracking retention rates like this along with a crisis, you might be able to find out what messaging is providing enough transparency that it's helping to have our retention rates not go down as much. Or can we show, all right, crisis hit, yes, we were affected, but post-crisis, we hit the ground running, we put out some new messages, and look at our retention rate, it went back up. Once again, proving how you were able to help the business as a whole. Next one, we'll talk about sales.
So this is my favorite KPI, and it's probably the most popular one in asking, do your marketing efforts and PR efforts drive actual sales? I think we've all been asked that type of correlation. When trying to prove the return on investment of an online or even offline or multi-channel marketing campaign, being able to show a direct link to actual sales is very, very, very powerful. Gone are the days when online marketing led to online sales and traditional marketing led to in-store sales. The distinctions are non-existent, and marketers need a way now to prove value in this constantly shifting marketing landscape. So the combination of existence of online and offline coverage and the ability to overlay sales data on top of broader marketing metrics gives marketers now the ability to connect campaigns for sales, both online and in-store. The below example shows how a marketer could easily track the impact of a new product launch on in-store sales. Visualizing both metrics in one graph gives all stakeholders a clear view of the direct impact of marketing on any sales channel.
And I think one thing to keep in mind, this can be difficult. If there are many different things going on beyond just your PR efforts, that's where if anyone's heard of a market mix model, those might need to be involved because your PR efforts, while they might be helping sales, they also could be contributing to many other things. However, it is still an important metric to show. It also opens up those boundaries that sometimes we hit internally of trying to get people to share their data. If you're able to show this graph, but no, really, it would actually look even better if you can maybe get the email direct marketing data from your partners next door, and you show them this, it could be a way to really start that conversation across the silos and start working together on integration efforts. Advertising spend is another one that also has a direct impact. Can you start working with them closer to show this information in one chart so that everyone understands it? It's not always easy if you have a very small part. So maybe you don't do overall sales. Maybe you focus on sales for the one event, the one launch, the one area you're focused on. But it is a very powerful graph, as Todd was saying, and it actually helps create more of a dialogue between you and your senior management that makes it valuable as well.
And Nicole, what we're seeing as well from our customers is that they're very savvy, and other departments within their brands have business intelligence tools such as Tableau, and they're asking whether or not platforms can be integrated into Tableau data. And the answer is absolutely yes, in terms of having an open framework platform is very important to take additional information and putting it and overlaying it with the social data.
Great. It's definitely important that the whole company sees the value in some of this data. So being able to share it across those lines really helps expand your presence. So now market share, which I think is actually very interesting. A lot of people don't think about it. I don't see it in many measurement reports, but when we are able to supply it, it does create a lot of impact. And I'll let Todd take it from there.
So this is the last KPI that we're going to talk about. And one can start asking, is marketing giving you a strategic advantage? The focus so far has been on ROI metrics for day-to-day use by marketers, but there is also value to be found at a higher level and over a longer period. The below graph shows an example of stock price versus online sentiment. By correlating overall online, online even or offline, brand and product mentions versus sentiment with high-level business indicators such as market share or stock price, businesses can find clearer links between major marketing and PR events and overall business impact. So it's a little bit trickier because it's not the ROI in terms of the traditional metrics that we're looking at, but it's looking at over the time.
I think this is very interesting. We had a client who unfortunately was going through a pretty big crisis, and they started seeing the effect on their stock price. So they had come to our PR teams and asked for some support on really turning around messaging specifically to investors. So because we knew investors was one of their key audiences, we knew we had to bring in the stock price. So we brought in some of this data, which you can get online for free, and we were able to really track, can we affect this? We worked very closely with some of their other teams internally, and we did see, as we saw an increase in positive message penetration in the media, we did see a better reaction in the stock price. So it's, again, knowing your audience from the beginning. If investors are on there, stock price is definitely something that could be an interesting indicator for you to include in your metrics reports.
Nicole, I'd just like to close in summary with regards to all these KPIs. With so much data now available, the burden is really now on marketers and PR professionals to prove that value and demonstrate it with the technologies out there. And fortunately, there are now business impact metrics that one can use.
Exactly. And I think that brings me into the real world examples that I'm going to go through. So I have two examples for clients. One, I think, is just a visual of one of the KPIs Todd already went over, and I'll give a little story behind. And the next is a little more abstract, but it does highlight the importance of you cannot just focus on media data to really have an impact anymore. I also wanted to highlight, if you want to send questions in over the system, we will be tracking them, so feel free to type away any questions and we can answer them at the end. So the first one, this is for a cake company, actually. It's brand new. They have a brand new process that they use, gluten-free, of course, as that's the biggest trend right now. And they were struggling a bit to get their sales going in store because people didn't recognize who they were. So we were lucky that they really were only spending money in PR, so it really was an example to show if we were to increase PR, what would we see here? So if you look at the yellow line, those are just traditional mentions. We have a social one as well, but I think this really highlights it. We were able to send them a chart. They sent us their sales data. We were able to incorporate it. And there were a lot more insights around here, but first we had to protect the name of the client so you don't see as many. But we did call out what some of those spikes were so that we can see certain messages really did lead to more sales than others. We also were able to highlight because they spent money on an event where they were able to increase more sales. This one chart, coupled with some of the insights and some more of the prescriptive strategies that the account team put along with it, really led to them increasing their budget with us, and we're able to improve the importance of sharing data across lines. They also started sharing with us SKU data, so meaning which cakes went better than others. It kind of created more of a consulting relationship, which I think is very important when it comes to some of this measurement. A lot of times we're treated as just give me that deck or give me those statistics. By working with them, they were really excited to see what other data that they could fold into it. And the account team really got some great prescriptive strategies, knowing that next time that they had to launch something or get a new cake out there, what information and what messages came across strongly. So I've been emphasizing this point quite a bit. What happens when media isn't enough? So I'm going to talk about one of our clients, Sango Ban. So what do you do when you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation with hundreds of thousands of employees around the world and no one recognizes your name? Sango Ban had been around forever in the United States, but they hadn't used the parent name. They let their sub-brands kind of operate on their own. That was shifting, and they were all coming under the parent umbrella. They had an opportunity. They were going to one of the largest industry conferences in their area, Greenbuild. It was in their backyard, and where most people didn't even know that they were based, and they really wanted to make an impact. So what does that mean? They said, they came to us and said, we're spending a lot of money as one of the premier sponsors. We're going to have a cafe area for people to take a break. That cafe area is going to be made out of all of our own materials. They are a building construction kind of manufacturer. We are going to have these fun little pedicabs because the conference is huge. We are going to have a coffee station outside. We're going to have billboards up throughout the entire city. We're going to have them at the airports. We're going to have them at bus stations. More pedicabs. They're putting out a few press releases. They were holding interviews inside of the conference. And so she goes, I'm really excited. I think if we prove this, if we could show that this works, we're going to go to the next step. And I go, great, let's measure it. And as my mind starts going of all the things that we can look at, she goes, so yeah, let's do some media monitoring. And I took a step back and was like, media monitoring isn't going to prove that all things were worth your investment. So we started kind of at step one. What is your goal? They had to prove that their new positioning of that parent umbrella was right and that the return on investment on that conference sponsorship was worth it so that they could do it again the following year. Who is that audience? Internal employees. Not everyone was happy about having to come under the parent umbrella. So how do we prove that it works to them? Industry attendees. So everyone who was coming to this conference, they wanted to make sure people knew who they were. This conference usually leads to some of their largest lead generation. So they want to make sure this new umbrella messaging that they were coming up with resonated. And then there's the general public. If you ask some people in Philadelphia, they might not know who they are. So they wanted to make sure if they wanted to be employer of choice for some people, or if someone was building something or a new company, people knew who they were in that area. So that started thinking, what platforms? Media and social media weren't obvious, but there was a website. They created a microsite for this event so people can find all the new launches that they were doing. Reputation. People actually know who they are when it's at the industry. Do they know who they are on the street? And that's where surveys really came in. So we had to think a little more robust. KPIs, really it was internal cooperation and ROI on spend. And reporting, we had to let those employees know. They knew that we were surveying them. We were asking them a lot of questions. We had to be able to follow up with them to make sure that they were on board. And the CEO and the global headquarters, which were in Paris, also wanted to see if this effort that North America was making was right. They wanted to see if all the research that went into bringing them under the parent umbrella and the new messaging was really going to pull things off. And insights, when I asked them, what is the one thing you want to do? They want to prove the positioning and show that they would sponsor next year. So those were the two big things that they needed to find. So, as I mentioned, we looked at all of these areas. We did media before and after. We looked at social media before and after, and of course during, to see if we wanted to interact with anyone. We looked at the website analytics, not only to their microsite, but did the microsite lead people to the contact us part of the main site for lead generation. For attendees, the educated public and employees, we did before and after surveys. So one, brand recognition. Two, did people understand what was going on with the messaging? Did they see that it connected to the industry? And for employees, we kind of called that the emotional survey. Like I said, some people weren't happy, so we wanted to make sure that they saw the value as well. So with the findings, we actually saw that media, while there was media, there was a huge white space because the only people at this conference were pushing out were press releases. No one was doing really interesting thought leadership. So for the next year, they were able to focus and put more budget towards that. Social media, they put a ton of effort into those pedicabs that you saw, into those bus ads that you saw, and they were gorgeous. They were beautiful, creative pieces. But the branding wasn't always that big, or there wasn't a hashtag. So we saw on social media a ton of people talking about these pedicabs and how great they were, how they saved their feet, how comfortable they were, but no one was putting that connection to the brand and just saying that they were the ones who helped provide them with them. So that helped to influence for next year where we were going to put the branding and how we were going to engage with social. For the website analytics, people were going there a lot, but it wasn't necessarily leading to the main page. So we were shifting some of the messaging to make people understand, if you like this, this is where you can find it. But what the client said was worth 10 times what he paid was what we found in the surveys. What we found in the surveys was even before people recognized the Sango Ban brand, they really liked the message. They understood the message. They understood the value that we had created. And after the conference, recognition of the Sango Ban brand went up across all 3 audiences, well, across, not the employees, they obviously knew, so across the 2 audiences, and employees felt much more comfortable with the plan post. And he was able to take the findings from the media, from the surveys, and from the website and be able to go to their CEO and say, the messaging worked, the plan is working, we just need to change a few things to make sure that we're set up for success. So if they only measured media, they would have found, yeah, there's a white space that we can do more thought leadership. They would not have known that all the work and effort that they put into the messaging, into the umbrella strategy, and into all those items that they put and invested in around the conference were worth it. So by the surveys and by social media and through the website analytics, we were able to tell more of a holistic story for them that really impacted change and influenced what they did in the following years. So really, kind of in summary, how do you prove the value in measurement? You have to ask those right questions, go beyond the media, and avoid those simple vanity metrics that we spoke up front. They're important for benchmarking, but they're not going to give you the full insight or the full answer. And that's it. So if we have any questions, we can go there. Which we do, and I'm just trying to be able to see them. Give me one moment. Okay, so one of the questions is, would love advice for working with much smaller clients or stats, statistically insignificant numbers, etc. We deal with this all the time. As much as I love some of the clients who are willing to share all their data with me and have thousands of mentions to really make it relevant, that doesn't always happen. Especially some more in the financial or B2B space, they're really regulated, so it's hard for them to put as much out there. What we found really works is sitting with them at the beginning and really asking what they need. We usually end up creating reports that you might only see a spike that's 3 or 4 mentions, but what were those, the message penetration variable, I think is very important. So meaning what percentage of those mentions had the key message that was coming through there. And for some of them, did that lead, it just might be a conversation with their sales team. It might not, you might not need to do a whole survey. You might not need to track all the sales information. It might just be, this is what we saw that had a high engagement, had high message penetration in it. Did this work for you? Do you like these messages? It's really just make sure that you don't give just numbers, especially if you're dealing with smaller ones. It's not going to give them the insight that they need. They really need to make sure that you're giving an insight that ties back to the work that you're doing and gives them good visuals.
And Nicole, on the Talkwalker side, we see many of our smaller clients, they will have access to Google Analytics. So what they're now able to do is they're able to take bits and pieces of the Google Analytics and overlay it into the social data analytics that they're getting to come up with some insights and show some ROI.
Great. Okay. Another question we got, are we able to share the graphs of your findings of the work at the conference? Unfortunately, no, because there was some proprietary information on there. I do have some extra information that I might be able wanted to reach out after the webinar. We could maybe speak offline, and I could figure out how to eliminate some of that proprietary information we had in there for you. Let's see. We have a question, and Todd, I think this is one for both of us. How do you tie monetary value to measurement? I think the measurement, you hear, I think that's why a lot of people still use the AVEs that I dread hearing. That's why a lot of people still use it, and it gives you a dollar amount. But what really AVEs is doing is it's creating false simplifications. It used to be, all right, if I got an ad for this size of something in the New York Times, what would that cost? Oh, look, you saved that much information because I was able to get this for you earned. Especially with everything going digital, those numbers are not accurate. It doesn't actually give a correct portrayal of it. So it is a little more difficult, I'm not going to lie, to give an actual monetary value to some of the statistics. If you are doing a smaller campaign, you might be able to take the overall spend that PR did, you know, break it down by the engagement numbers that you got, and be able to say, you know, we were able to get this much for you, that we were able to break down the cost. I think also correlating it to the sales data, correlating it to spend, does help visualize that for you. We are very much a qualitative industry, so it can be difficult to bring it down to a very specific dollar amount, but the visuals of those correlations that Todd showed and I showed in the cake example does help as well. Todd, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd like to add one of our prominent members of AMAC, Mark Weiner at Prime. He one day said on a panel that always resonated with me, okay, so yes, AVEs are something that we really don't do anymore, and we don't advise doing it. But if you just take away the dollar signs from them, it still shows some type of metrics in terms of you can compare data, but not rely 100% on the dollar signs. I'm not saying it in his exact words, but just take away the dollar signs, and you can kind of see what's happening in terms of your peaks and valleys. I also am a big fan of trying to affiliate promo codes and hashtags with any type of PR social activities that can be done through content generation.
Mm-hmm. Another question we have, what are some of the most common problems clients have when it comes to measurement? For me, it's really articulating what they need to see. You know, people hear measurement, especially in PR, and assume they're getting a few simple graphs. They then struggle to do something with that share voice graph or that mentions over time graph. So some of the biggest complaints I get, even though that might be all they wanted, that's all they wanted to spend on, they didn't want to go as in-depth as maybe they could have, they then struggle to actually do something with that data. So I would really recommend that if that's their biggest issue, we need to show value in some of connecting the dots and being able to bring that qualitative information forward. Todd, anything for you? Some of the most common problems?
Yeah, it's more advice than problems, because there's so much data out there and there's so many different ways in which you can slice and dice everything. Right. However, I always say to folks, well, look at this data set, look at the graph, and say to yourself, so what? And it ties back to what you're saying, Nicole. What are you going to do with it? Like, what does it mean? So what? Is this helpful? Are you going to do something with it? If you're not going to be able to do something with it, was it really that valuable for you?
Yeah, I have a rule of thumb. Ask yourself, so what, 3 times. And it usually helps get to an answer that will help the client. And to go off of Todd's comment as well, there is a lot of data out there. Looking at 30,000 social media mentions in a month might give you a nice overview graph, but if you spend the time trying to analyze all of those, you're going to go a little crazy, and you're not really going to be able to see the forest from the trees there. You need to be able to take that step back and see that overview. So those questions at the beginning of really identifying the audience, really identifying the goal, will help make sure that you're looking at the data that matters most to the client. That doesn't mean you shouldn't collect everything as a benchmark, but it helps to focus your insights.
Yeah, I see to build on that, I see some of our savviest users of our platform in particular are those that, sure, they can get all the data in the world that they want to, but they really want to narrow it down, and they do sampling. And sampling has been very helpful for them. But it all depends what type of company and how much volume's out there.
Right. So I see another question here. You speak a lot about metrics, retentions, lead generation, mentions. What are the best platforms for pulling these analytics together in a cohesive report that connects the dots? So there are many things out there, and they range from price. You know, Todd mentioned Tableau that can pull everything together. What Tableau does is simply pulls in data from a few different streams so you can maybe see it on one screen. I call it like an API dashboard. Talkwalker, actually, one of the reasons we like using them is I can input and upload time series data into Talkwalker, and it will take the aggregated media mentions that I have from my account, and it will put them with, if I wanted to upload my Google Analytics data, I can put it into there. So there are many things out there, and they range from price. They're kind of usually called API dashboards or something like that pull them together. My biggest, I guess, red flag I would put there is just because all the numbers might be in one visual, you still need to make sure you're putting that human element onto it to understand what it actually means and to give the background in it so people can see what they look like. But yeah, there are a lot out there. I would just, they range in price, so be careful of what you're getting to make sure it gives you the value you need. For some of these reports, we're using Talkwalker.
Yeah, my advice is when you're looking at platforms, one thing is there's not one platform that can do it all. It's just impossible. Right. And the other thing is that try to trial the platform and have an opportunity to test it out. Generally, with a real case project would be best. And ask to speak to one of their customers, and that will say a lot. Of course, they're going to give you a good customer to speak to, but the customer will be fair and balanced because they never want to burn a colleague in the industry in terms of platforms that they're using.
Agreed. There's a lot of tools out there. Some are amazing, some are very pretty, but really dig into the background data that it gives you, how user-friendly it is, how it works, but does it actually give you an insight or give you that information that you need to make the insight, or is it simply just making your data look pretty and you're still going to get those questions of, so what? So I think that might be all the questions. I think I just want to go back, someone asked about some smaller data sets there. It is really bringing in the qualitative assessment into the numbers that help that data get through. And I think that's important no matter what. You always need that human analysis in there, but especially for some of the smaller numbers. Todd, anything else that you wanted to bring?
I'd just like to add that we are available for questions. You have our email addresses and hashtag handles, and we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, there are some handouts that should be available through the platform, so feel free to take a look at those. And as we mentioned, the session is being recorded, so it will be available at a later date, as will most of the AMEC webinars that are going on. There are a few more today. I believe there's one at 3 o'clock today that if you go to amecmmna.com, it gives you a nice rundown of some of the webinars that are going on for the North American week of Measurement Month. Just Google Measurement Month AMEC. There's a whole calendar with everything that's going on globally. And the AMEC.org Twitter handle will also have a whole bunch of events that are going on. They're all free. And it provides many different views on measurement, everything from nonprofits to government to digging into different areas like modeling. So feel free to ask us any questions, reach out via email, and we just hope that you, through the process here, we're able to see the value in integrated measurement and moving beyond media and how important it is to our industry that we see that we are part of a larger discussion and we shouldn't be siloed. And with that, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.